Can I use scrap styrofoam to build a durable, lightweight, high-performance cooler for free? Absolutely not. Here's what happened.
Hi, I'm Paul. My channel is called Timber Walkers. I make infrequent, mediocre quality videos on random topics. Subscribe or not, doesn't make much difference to either one of us, to be honest. But in a previous video, I made this cooler out of foam board. And since we recently bought new appliances, was left with a bunch of styrofoam packing material, which of course I'm not going to throw away. So I thought I might make another cooler. I do have a couple of pieces of 2-inch styrofoam. That's a 15-inch ruler for scale. And I'm just going to glue these together like so to create my base. And then I've got some larger sheets of 1-inch styrofoam that I will sandwich together with glue to make additional 2-inch pieces, 2-inch thick pieces for the sides and top.
In the end, I think a cooler is just a foam or styrofoam box. And the interesting question is, what do you use for the exterior protective shell? And I think there's a variety of things that you could use. And it kind of boils down to balancing cost, durability, weight, and aesthetics. Some of the things I thought of were fiberglass, wood paneling or thin plywood like Luann, wooden planks, sheet metal. I think you could even, if cost was a big issue, use tape or contact paper or some type of vinyl material. All kinds of different options. There's a great material called polywall, which is probably kind of like a durable, waterproof PVC type material that would be perfect.
In my first attempt of gluing up the 2 layers of the 1-inch styrofoam, I did get a little bit of separation, and I think that it was either too much glue or insufficient clamping pressure. So I'm trying to up my clamping game this round. As you can see, I don't have a wonderful collection of clamps, but doing the best I can. I probably should have done a time lapse of the glue up of the box just so you could see the amount of chaos involved. My clamps aren't long enough. Gorilla Glue has like a 10-minute working time, and everything has to be done all at once. So there's going to be some imperfections, but hopefully caulk and covering materials and paint, etc., will make it look nice in the end. Keeping our fingers crossed. I've got some of the trim pieces glued on. I'm using epoxy for that, and I've glued a piece of thin plywood to the bottom for structural support, stability, strength, durability, whatever. I'm kind of pretending that this is a free cooler that I'm building from scrap materials, but you know, you end up using so many consumables. And then, yeah, I did make a trip to the home center for some more trim. I got the cheapest I could find. You can see where I've used two pieces there of the cheapest trim I could find. The kind of corner trim was more expensive, but then it dawned on me as I'm gluing this up that I had to use twice as much of the less expensive trim. Don't let not having a workshop stop you from building things. This is mine. Good ventilation, good lighting under a nice shade tree. This being my second cooler build, I think I can say with some authority that it is a foolish, foolish exercise. But if you are foolish like me, I would recommend that you use foam board rather than styrofoam. It's just a much more durable material than the styrofoam. In the first build that I did make out of foam board, I lined the interior with this foil tape and it's held up well. That's not going to work for this styrofoam. It's just too fragile. So I think what I'm going to do for my interior liner is I'm going to glue a piece of cardboard over the interior walls and then cover it with this adhesive vinyl, and we'll see how that works. Another thing I learned is I bought this stick-on tile for the exterior shell, and it sticks on great to the styrofoam for a few hours and then it falls off. So I did a little test here, and Gorilla Glue does hold it on quite well. I've got my vinyl covered cardboard that I'm going to use for my liner, and I've started gluing the pieces to the interior of the cooler with Gorilla Glue. I've also got my thin piece of plywood coated with epoxy and glued to the bottom of the cooler. All the trim is applied to the outside. I've got the interior panels glued in place and caulked all the seams and corners. If you're going to build a cooler, ideally you're looking for maximum durability, lowest cost, lightest weight, and I think you get to pick two of those at best. But I will say this vinyl wrapped cardboard that I used for the interior lining, it seems surprisingly durable, and it's certainly low cost and lightweight. Might even be a possibility as an exterior shell. I've got two sides of the external shell attached with Gorilla Glue, but I will say that when I discovered that the stick-on tile did not stick to styrofoam, I thought it would be a good idea to remove the adhesive with Goo Gone. That was not fun, but got it done. And it is a little bit on the vinyl tile is a little bit on the heavy side. I don't really like how this corner came out. I didn't think that through very well. May see what I can do to adjust that. Here's my plan for the lid of the cooler. I've cut a piece of the 3/4 inch styrofoam, appropriately sized. I'm going to trim that out all the way around with the styrene trim. I'll cover the top with the 1/4 inch plywood, and then on the inside of this, if I can do this one-handed, I've glued a smaller piece that snugly fits into the interior. And now I'm working on gluing this piece of Luan to the lid. It's cut the size and sanded. Set timer for 8 minutes.
8 minutes, starting now.
I've got the plywood cover glued to the lid, and I've applied a couple of coats of spray paint and clear coat. I'm really puzzling over the handle, but here's kind of what I've got so far. I 3D printed that handle and then bolted it to this trim piece, thinking that will give me more surface area to epoxy this to the side of the cooler, one on each side. It's got to hold potentially a lot of weight, so I'm not convinced that's going to be strong enough. Here's the underside of the lid. I'm going to use foam tape to put a gasket all the way around and then cover that double-sided foam tape with the vinyl, adhesive vinyl. I think the gasket came out pretty nicely, and I think with a little bit of clamping pressure in the latch system, I'll get a pretty good seal. And speaking of the latch system, I printed out this latch. Got all my hardware ready, my 3D printed handles and latch spray painted, ready to go. I'll use a couple of pieces of nylon webbing for the hinges, and then I'll need some way to attach all that to the cooler because it doesn't have a lot of meat to screw things into. So I'm going to apply some mounting plates. These are just scraps of wooden trim painted. I'll epoxy those to the cooler to give myself some meat to screw into when I'm mounting the hardware. As I wrap this up, I'll note that in making and building things, I'm guided by a couple of key principles. One is figure it out as I go along, and two is looks pretty good from about 10 feet. And you'll see evidence of that second one as I do the close ups. I did use quite a few scraps and supplies on hand, but if I'm honest, I'd have to admit that I spent about $85 on additional materials. That said, I do think the insulating performance of this cooler is better than similar size coolers you could buy new for around 50 or 60 bucks. But no, I'm not going to test that. Assuming though you had free styrofoam, I think you could build a similarly sized and similarly durable cooler for around $40 if you used the vinyl wrapped cardboard for both the inner liner and the outer shell. And lastly, all the 3D prints I used were models downloaded from Printables, and I'll include links to those below. You'll also find a link to a blog post where I provide additional details about this build. Thanks for watching, and I do welcome your comments and suggestions. Roll the close-ups.